Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Your Mental. Just a reminder that this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional. I know they are hard to find, and I get that. I have a bunch of resources on my website if you need them, but I am not your clinician. I am a psychologist, but I am not your psychologist. So if you need any specific help, please look for the help of a licensed mental health professional. Learn all you can learn from the podcast. Enjoy the episode. All right, everyone, welcome to Mind Your Mental. Today we have Dr. Kojo Sarfo, who is a social media content creator, mental health nurse practitioner, and psychotherapist with over 2 million followers on all of your platforms. You were actually one of the first platforms I followed on TikTok because I was seeing a lot of stuff where people had no sense, but then also a lot of informational content that was boring. And you have a good combo of you have informational content and you have some sense, and you're not boring. So I was like, okay, so I can look at this, because there was when I first got on TikTok, it was either okay, either it's only we're only doing dancing videos, or some of your stuff is just too intense. Oh my God, this is a boring video. Yeah. Good information, but boring. And your stuff was a good combo of okay, so I can get some skits in here. You also did some rhymes. I was okay. And as someone who looks up resources, this is actually accurate. All right. He ain't make this stuff up. I can follow this person. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. One of the things I really liked is the fact that you specialize in, you talk about things that I think they're being talked about more now, but you've been on social media for a little bit. And I don't think there were as many mental health professionals that were actually certified on social media, as well as individuals who were just talking point blank about this is what ADHD will look like. This is what this will look like. These are ways to help you, and providing resources in the first place. How was that for you when you started? Because there's a lot of people doing it now, but that was not the case in the beginning, in my opinion.
Yeah, in the beginning, people were moving out of fear because, in school, we're not taught to embrace social media. So people think of social media as something that you can try out, but you have to tread cautiously. Don't really put yourself out there. Nobody should know where you work at. Just kind of keep it all within. But then I'm looking at the kids who they're posting everything. They're being transparent. They're being vulnerable. So I came as myself and also answer questions that people happen to have. And eventually, you don't know that you're doing the right thing until you go for so long. And then other people who are reputable start to come on the platforms. And that was kind of like a cosign that I'm meant to be here, because I'm seeing somebody from here, somebody from Nashville, somebody from Johns Hopkins, somebody from UCLA. People are coming to social media. So that kind of reaffirmed that I was in the right position. But for a long time, I wasn't really sure if I was supposed to be on it. So I was just kind of on it. And I'm just hoping that it doesn't, interfere with my professional standing, because I was having so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that shows when people are, it's not only about providing the information, but also having fun with it. When people ask me about social media, I'm like, listen, as soon as it becomes boring, that's when I typically pivot. For the longest, I was doing skits, and I was over it. And then I was doing the talking head videos, I'm over it. And then I was doing lip syncing, and I was over it. And I'll just switch, because I genuinely think I need to be providing information, but it needs to be fun, because it is work. So if it's not fun, I'm out. I'm not about to do this. Read an article. I can't do it. I'm bored, which is crazy.
Yeah. I think that was an advantage for me, because I know how, randomized control trials work and meta-analysis. I know all that stuff, but then even there's certain things that when I look them up, I have to really pause and try and figure out how to interpret it, because it's not that straightforward. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking to myself, the average person would never know this information. So if I take it, I make it easy to understand, but then it's actually fun, then this is how I would have learned. So I put it out in a way that I think somebody like me would be able to easily understand it. And that's made a huge difference.
Yeah. What are some of the mental health topics or diagnoses or whatever that you tend to focus on within your content? Are there certain diagnoses that you hone in more than others?
Yeah, so ADHD for sure. Now autism as well. Mm-hmm. Bipolar disorder, depression. Depression has always been something that people want to know about. Trauma, and I was surprised to realize how many people are interested in learning about thought disorders like schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, and also psychosis, especially with the substance use. Yeah. People are very interested in learning about psychosis as a symptom and what can lead to it. So almost everything, but you would be very surprised that there's certain conditions like postpartum depression, which a lot of people are interested in, which I know because my audience is 77%, female, but it's 18 to 25 and then 25 to 34. But everybody wants to know about postpartum depression. The people who are older, people who are younger. So it's just about looking at the analytics and figuring out what topics are, popular at the moment. It's also seasonal at times, because like during the fall months, seasonal depression, there's a higher demand for those videos. So you have to kind of keep your ear to the streets to figure out what people want to know about at that particular moment in time.
Yeah, and I feel like you have a good combination of not only looking at it from the social media lens, not only looking at it from the licensed professional lens, but also from your lived experience. Because you mentioned the fact that you have diagnoses that you're like, listen, I know this not only because I read it, but I lived this in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, and that's where I tend to come. I come from that perspective first, just as me as a person with ADHD. And then when I put out those relatable experiences, and it draws people to you, and then they're like, oh, wow, there's actual factual information on this page. But the first thing that's going to bring them is something that's funny, because they can resonate with it emotionally. Because like, I forgot my wallet here. I have to pay for this twice. I have to buy 3 or 4 of this item. I keep self-sabotaging. And then after you do these things, so many times, you realize that you're not the only one that does it, because you go online and you see a video and you look in the comment section and everybody else is saying that they did the same thing this morning. So I come as a human being with ADHD first. And I think that's been probably the biggest difference for me, because if you come as a professional, then they want you to like bring all these articles, and like reference this and that. But when you come as somebody who is a professional, they want to hear about you. And then you can draw from like the professional world, as opposed to drawing from the professional world and just kind of like sprinkling in the things about yourself. I'm doing it the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, because I think one of the main reasons why I got on social media was to provide information, but I also wanted to break down the third wall about mental health and well-being, and like what clinicians look like, because there's this scariness of people not knowing. It's like everyone's telling you to go to therapy, but like, I need to know, like, what am I walking into? Like, is the person going to be judgy? Right. And I feel like being on social media and being able to state, like, I'm a licensed mental health professional, I'm a psychologist, and I also have a psychologist. Just something as simple as being like, so my psychologist told me the other day that I was tripping. And people will be like, wait. You see a mental health professional? And I'm like, yeah, I get high on my own supply, honey. What you think? You think I can take in all this information and not get help myself? It's a lot. Right. It's a lot of stuff in the first place. So I feel like that's incredibly helpful to have people out there, because I also noticed there was a bunch of misinformation. Like there's a lot of like toxic positivity stuff, and a lot of things like, I remember doing a post about affirmations, and I was just being like, you do know that like you got to have some action behind the affirmation, right? Like you don't just write something down and be like, it'll happen. No, you write something down and then you write the steps to what you're going to do to contribute to making it happen. Yeah. Like this isn't like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, honey. You gotta like do something. And people were like, well, we're just putting out positive energy. And I said, okay, that's not what, like I'd be like, I'm sorry. I don't know what that means as a mental health professional.
It did create a blueprint for how we could put our information out. Because I would see those videos where it'd say, just do this and that, and it'll cure depression. And the video will go viral. And I'm like, hold up, this is not true. But the way that it was put out there was very compelling. So if I use that same type of thought process and I put a spin on it to where it's coming from my content, which I know is true, then it can reach a lot of people and it can make a big impact. So I think they kind of set the blueprint, because even though they were not saying anything that was factual, there's a way to communicate online, or the method of the delivery of content is so important. But they had cracked that code. And that's what we've always lacked for so long. Nobody has ever known how to talk to the people. They only know how to talk to each other amongst ourselves, because we're using all this big language, but we don't know how to talk like me or you talking to the people. Yeah. So those kids really taught us that system for this is how you reach the people. And if we just double back behind it and provide the correct information. That's
what we call a reframe, y'all. Look at that. Well, no, it wasn't that helpful. But would you know what they did give us? They gave us a blueprint, and that could be like so that we can actually help in the first place. I feel like that's helpful.
But you
know what? I will say, as someone who like, there's not many people that look like us who are doing this work. I actually don't think that people, like, I don't think we individuals, Black people, individual African descent, I don't think we struggle as much with breaking down concepts as when it comes down to like having conversations, because most of the time my caseload was a lot of people who look like me, and they were just like, listen, give me the Reader's Digest now, do I need to get them an IEP? Like, what do I need to do to help my child? Like, most of the time I was so used to people just being like, that 20-page report, I'm not doing it. So what do I need to do to help my child read better? Because I'm not doing this with you. I'm not about to read this. Like, I feel like coming from the community clinic place and all this other stuff, I got more used to having to break stuff down. And I remember getting frustrated because I'm like, well, like, that's not what I'm seeing on social media. Sometimes I'm seeing stuff that's like a little too intricate. I'm like, you just gave them 5 steps. Can you just give them 1? Like, one step will help them tremendously. This is too much information for me, who like knows how to do this in the first place.
Yeah, it's a lot. And some people like that type of content, but I think, actually, I can say this with a lot of certainty. The attention span has dropped online. Yeah. So if you're jamming a whole lot into one video, it's not the best way to get it out there. It could be the right thing. You have to break it up into like small parts for people to understand, because I think the average person reads on a 6th grade reading level. I think I saw that somewhere recently, which it came as a shock, but I can see that, on average. So you have to put it out like bit by bit. And I don't like seeing like a whole much on one video. Sometimes people put it out in the works, and then I think to myself, who's watching this whole thing? Because I watched like 6 seconds and now I'm done. I just can't. It has to be compelling to really even get me to pause my scrolling to watch it. So a 3-minute 47-second video about something that could have been put out there in like 17 seconds. Nah, not for me.
But you know what? It's also taught me, like, I think we need to start using better strategies when it comes to the mental health stuff, because Risa Tisa taught people a lot of things, but if the story is good, they will, like, I never listened to the whole thing. I got the gist of it because I genuinely don't know how people had the time, but they found the time. Like, they found it. And I'm like, mental health has to do the same thing. Like with your videos, when you'll share like the skit, or you'll share a typical scenario, and you'll see stuff in the comments. Like, for example, what are some, let's say if you had to name like 3 or 4 common things that people will comment in your space about ADHD, when you're just like, I'm struggling with this. What are some things that people are like, yeah, I can't do that. Losing your keys. I know you mentioned that.
Right. They'll mention having to do things over, like having to repeat things over and over as an adult is frustrating. Like having to read over certain lines twice, having to buy things over and over again, having to go the whole day saying you're going to do something and you forget to do that thing. And then tomorrow you're going to do it again, but you forget to do it tomorrow. So now it's derailed your plans for the week, and now your confidence with which you think you can get things done is low. So now you're frozen, you're paralyzed, you're not doing anything. So I think just how disabling it can be to have a condition that people can't see, and things are just piling up. Like the laundry is still in your bed, you haven't folded after a week, the dishes are in the sink, so on and so forth. So I think people, like in the comment section, those are the main things I'm seeing. And on the diagnosis part, I'm seeing people getting diagnosed later in life, saying that they thought that they were lazy and they thought that they were unmotivated. And it wasn't until they put 2 and 2 together they realized it is ADHD. But they figured it out at 35, 47, 26 instead of like in 2nd grade.
Yeah, I saw this video the other day. It was this woman, and she had mentioned that she had just started Vyvanse, which is a medication that helps individuals with ADHD. And she was just like, when I tell you that, she said it was amazing, but she said, I'm also like kind of ticked off that people's brains just like work like this. She was like, she's like, I cannot believe that people's brains work like this. And she had just started the medication because she had just got diagnosed, and she had to be in like her 30s. And she's just like, I can't believe that this is how some people's brain works. And in the comments, there were a lot of people saying like, when I tell you the amount of productivity I lost, how upset I am that it took so long for me to get diagnosed. Like people were just like, yeah, I'm upset too, because you mean to tell me my brain could have been working like this just like you mentioned, if people were diagnosed in the second grade, like she was just like, I just started, I can't believe people's brains work like this. I cannot imagine. I could have soared if I had known that like this is what was going on with me.
There's a lot of grief attached to that whole concept of being diagnosed later in life, because then you have to kind of grieve the person that you could have been, and then you're thinking to yourself, like, everybody maybe knew that I was this way, or people could operate with a greater capacity, and I only had this. I was capped off my whole life. So you have to sometimes, try and forgive yourself, forgive your parents. Sometimes parents know, and they don't tell their kids.
Listen,
like I've seen, like you've seen it too.
I had a patient that was putting their mom was putting, after we did the assessment and we were talking about medications. Mind you, we did a couple of days of assessment, and this is when I was still in training. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we give him medication. He's on medication. We put it in his in his food." And when I tell you, the neuropsychologist in the room was like, "Why?" We just did 2 days. We did a full battery. We just did 2 days of assessment. One, we have to talk about the fact that your child is on medication and they don't know. Two,
wow.
Why? Well, so what? Because he was just like, so when we asked if there were any previous diagnoses, and he just did like a slow blink. And I wanted to be like, when we asked, what did you hear? Because he's not going to say this. I need to know. What did you? We said, do you have any diagnoses? Because, he's just, most neuropsychologists are very like, straight to the point. But in my mind, they're like, I mean, answer him. Because I did 2 days. You know how long those reports take? The child was, on the ceiling. And I was like, well, is the medication?
It takes a while.
I was like, is the medication working? And they were like, I made sure he wasn't on the medication during the assessment. And I'm like, oh, thanks for that. That was so helpful. Wow. It was so weird, Dr. Kojo. This is weird.
I'm curious, how old was this child? Like 12, 13?
10.
10? Fourth grader. Fourth grader can still know about, well...
No, she just didn't. She stated, it was parents, that didn't want the child to think that there was something wrong with them. So, I guess she thought that he thought that medication would mean that something was wrong with him. But I also asked, like, did he notice any change with the medication? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, so I think you could have approached it with your child. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. This is meant to help you. Do you notice a difference? Do you like the difference? Like all this other stuff. And I'm just like, in my mind, now, mind you, I'm still a trainee, but in my mind, I'm like, yo, this is why people don't work with kids. Because most of the time, the reason why people don't work with kids, it's not the kids. It's the parents. Because, like, can you have... I know it's your child, but you were drugging your child. I'm just putting that out there. Like, I was just like, what?
It's a big ethical question.
It's a big ethical concern. Like, just because you created this person doesn't mean you can drug them without them knowing. And it also takes away their autonomy of knowing what's going on with them. Especially since when the medication can have a significant decrease in your appetite. And I'm just like, so... she would take weekend breaks. Some people take weekend breaks. Not now, because Vyvanse is in a drought, so ain't nobody taking no breaks. But, like, she would take weekend breaks because she had concerns about his eating, which is it's a common concern. But I'm just like, I guarantee you he noticed the difference in his mood Friday versus Saturday. Like, kids can be thinking something's wrong with them. I just remember thinking, wow, this is... okay, I'm never going to forget this story.
And then you tend to question everything that you've been told once you find out that was a lie. So
she's going to have to tell him.
At least a deeper
she's going to have to tell him, like, okay, so I know you're in college now, and you're wondering why you're having issues. It's because you went out of state and I can't drug you anymore. I'm just saying. That's why. Because that's what it is, right? Like, they're going to notice. Like, mom went on vacation.
At some point, you're going to have that conversation,
I don't know why I can't focus anymore. Something's wrong with me. No, mom's on vacation and she doesn't get a chance to drug you today.
Well, this happens so much more than people realize. But the comment section is what's letting me know this, because you sometimes forget. But then when we look at a comment, and then sometimes people will type something in there, and it'll say like 5.8K likes. I'm like, wow, almost 6,000 people agree with that statement. The comment section will tell you everything.
What do you feel like like are some of
It's
the
all in the
common misconceptions for ADHD? Like, as someone who gets to see both sides of it, social media, practice, living with it,
comments.
what do you feel like are some of the common myths that you're just like, nope, that's actually not true?
People thinking that it's fake, number one. Some people still think that it's not a real condition. Uh, and those people, sometimes they have ADHD too, and it's not until they realize it or they see somebody who is close to them, they see how it impacts them, then they're like, oh, wow, something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Another misconception is you can grow out of it. Like, oh, you'll grow out of ADHD. No, kids just learn to use drugs or they just figure out different ways to compensate. Some healthy, some not healthy, but a good majority of people don't just grow out of it. Um, the medications making you like starting your growth, I see that a lot. Now, the evidence on that is somewhat unclear, but people will say, kind of like with the whole autism and vaccines thing, people kind of say that. I've heard that by a couple of people just recently. But I'll say those are the main things. They don't really believe ADHD is real. The medications, they stunt your growth, and also they don't see how disabling it can be for a person.
Yeah, I think some people don't take it seriously enough. Just like you mentioned, like it being disabling, like it's hard to get to a situation where I don't know, you just want your body to move or work in a different way. People aren't taking it seriously. People are saying like, you mean I'm not lazy? You're not lazy. Your brain works differently. You know, like everybody has learning and thinking differences. And I feel like we don't focus on accommodations the way that we should. It's like, I've always had an issue with the word
Yeah.
atypical, because I've always been like, what's typical exactly?
Reciprocal, yeah.
And it's used so much in the field, and I'm like, and I think it also frustrates me because as someone who like focuses on Black mental health, most of our behaviors are seen as atypical, and they're going to be for an
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
science that wasn't devoted to studying us and understanding us. And I feel like it's the same thing
Yeah.
with neurodivergence. I'm like, well, instead of thinking about the person being atypical, why don't we think about the environment not supporting the person the appropriate way, right? Like, I always state that, like, I have one of the biggest and most normalized accommodations. I even get compliments on them every day. And that's my glasses, but I don't see anyone saying something like, oh, well, maybe if you just like try to see better, maybe if you would just squint your eyes. But like, has anyone ever said anything about how is this any different than having difficulty focusing on tasks, having difficulty with multi-step directions, needing somebody to give you a recording of the lecture after you, like, how are glasses any different? It's just a normalized accommodation.
Yeah. Wow, I haven't think about that.
Yeah, and nobody does. They'll be like, oh, I love like, oh, you like my accommodation that the environment has, covered by insurance, because most assessments aren't even covered in insurance. But we got whole optometrists who are making a bag off of my annual exam. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. It's an environment thing.
Yeah. No, there's so many different talking points on this because number one, like when people take ADHD medication for the first time, I do liken it to somebody wearing glasses for the first time. Like the first time I put on glasses, I was in Florida and we were living in an apartment, like a 3-story apartment. We were on the second floor. I looked out from the balcony. I could see the blades of grass for the first time. And I could never see that clearly. So it blew my mind. And I'm like, wow, so people can, like, I didn't know you were supposed to, like, you could read, like, the signs on the street. I thought you had to come, like, really close to it before
Were you driving, Dr. Kojo?
No, I was in 5th grade.
Oh, 5th grade. I'm going to say, I'm, continue.
I have LASIK now, but I can't drive without my visual, my surgically, visual accommodations. Without it, I can't drive, not at all. So people don't realize that you need accommodations for your brain, medications to help you do X, Y, and Z. And when people can't get that, the loss of potential, you have to sometimes paint it out vividly and let them know there's a high rate of STDs, teenage pregnancy, car accidents. You have to make the situation as grave as possible. And then people are like, oh, there's a higher rate of substance use. Okay, all right, well, maybe we'll go get them checked out because I think it's important.
Yeah.
People are still in denial sometimes because it takes them a while to process that this information is true.
Yeah, I think we're getting to a better space when it comes to stigma. But like, one thing I have noticed while teaching like grad and undergrad is like the younger generation, they have no problem talking about like, oh yeah, so my therapist told me this, or no, I'm struggling because of my medication, like there's a shortage, versus like
Yeah.
their parents would probably be like, stop talking about your Vyvanse in church. This is
Yeah.
inappropriate. You know, like it's very different generationally, because they'd be like, no, I can't focus. It's a Vyvanse shortage, girl. So send it to me via email. I can't do this. I can't focus on this.
Especially us. We don't talk about it enough. It's a shameful idea or concept to bring up anything mental health related outside the four walls of the house, because people are going to know that your kid has X, Y, and Z. And then parents sometimes feel like that's like a reflection of their parenting or, their genes. And it's not. It's just a diagnosis that better explains the majority of the things that you do. But in our community, that stigma is so pervasive. I'm still seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm still seeing it today.
I'm gonna tell more people about the glasses, because he's like, I don't blame my eyesight on my mom. So like the ADHD, it's just my brain, honey. It's just the way it works. Everybody has learning and thinking differences. Okay, I read ridiculously fast. Everybody can't read as fast as me. Does that mean I'm gonna shame them for taking a week longer to read the book?
Wow, that's a superpower.
Like my husband one time. We were reading a book together. We read books together. And this one time he was just like, what you mean you on this chapter? What do you mean? Or like the few times where I listened to like an Audible and I didn't have my headphones, and he was like, you know how that sounds? It sounds like, because I listened to it at like 1.5. He was like, why? What are you listening to? I was like, oh, I'm listening to this book. He said, it doesn't sound, what's the speed? I got to listen to it at 1.5 where it sounds obnoxious. Because anything lower than that, I just be like, what are the words, honey? Hurry up. I can't do this.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But
so you have to go that speed to comprehend information. Right?
I do. Or
you have to go that fast.
Even talking at a normal speed, like my mom cannot stand how fast I talk.
Can I let somebody in real quick? Is that okay? Okay.
Oh, this is cute. But do we really need more headbands? Oh, not for no $38, ma'am. I'm all for supporting businesses, but that's, how does a headband cost $38 and a head wrap cost me $15?
Okay. All right, thank you, brother. All right, appreciate you. Talk to the guy. Yeah. Yes, sir. We'll talk to him. All right, thank you, brother. My bad. People always need me when I'm doing something important.
No, I totally understand. What was I saying? Oh, I was gonna say, I always like when it comes to the way I talk, my mom gets frustrated at how fast I talk. But when I talk at a normal speed, to me, it sounds obnoxious. Like it sounds like I'm being condescending. Like it sounds like I'm being rude when I talk at a normal speed.
So are you talking slower than you normally talk right now?
A bit, but
okay.
But not so much that it's like, however, like, okay, so if I'm just, just like, okay. So if I were to, it sounds like I'm making fun of the person I'm talking to.
Oh, okay, it makes sense. You feel like you're having to pause more than necessary, kind of like you're talking to a kid.
Not talking to a kid, because I talk to the voice the same way. I talk to my voice the same way.
It could be helpful. They'll pick up on it eventually.
They will. They'll be like, everybody talks normal except for mom. Mom talks really fast, and you just get used to it. Like one of my really good friends, we went to school together and we separated for a little bit. And when I saw her a while back, she was just like, wow. After I was talking to her, she was like, I forgot how fast you talk. It's going to take me a little bit because she was used to being around normal people. And she was just like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, it depends. People from Louisiana talk fast. Puerto Ricans talk really fast. So sometimes, like people are accustomed to it. Maybe just not the people in your area.
Yeah, I can see how it could be a lot. Like my husband, he's from Nashville, so like he talks at a normal speed. I think I talk really fast, and both of us were frustrated at each other's communication style. We were both like, this is too much. But
it's so important that you can realize that, because that can lead to like a whole like variety of problems just if you communicate in a different way from the person that you're the closest to.
Yeah, and I see that, so like when it comes to like mental health, I see that a lot, like in accommodations, like say we're talking about ADHD, and like I feel like I think some people, I think like with the myths and misconceptions of like it being a cop out, people may need to understand what it's like when it comes to, I don't know, say you're just moving in with someone who has ADHD and you don't know what their typical lifestyle is when it comes to like completing tasks, or I leave cabinets open, or like, okay, they may have time blindness when it comes to different tasks. And you don't really know this until you're living with them or until you get in a relationship with them. And it really is just like, it's kind of like having a different communication style. And I feel like people need to be, if we're more accepting of it, if we talk about it more, it could be more understanding about like, oh, okay, so you do this differently, I do it this way, no way is better than the other. But until we have a conversation about it, we're, I don't want you to think that, if I say I didn't have ADHD, well, I don't have ADHD, but like we shouldn't assume that my way is the default. Right? Just because somebody else does it a different way and they have a diagnosis, okay, but why does that mean that my way is the default? Like, why do we automatically do it my way?
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't, it blows my mind that people can still get married today without a prenup and a psychiatric evaluation. I don't want to get too left field, but if those two things are mandated, it would solve 80% of the problems. Just get prenup just for everybody. Just throw out the money is now no longer an issue. And then a psychiatric evaluation, because if you don't understand how the person that you're with acts, then you can take it as them being defiant, or they don't care, they're nonchalant, or they're overbearing. No, they may have ADHD, they might have trauma that they're dealing with, or grief, or depression. But if you don't know these things, it can turn into a fight after fight after fight after fight. And sometimes it can lead to a breakup of a situation where maybe you all were meant to be with each other. So it's important. It looks like you and your husband have already figured it out, but there's so many people out there. Well, at least you're enough that to work on these things because of your profession. Yeah. Some people don't even know it's an issue. They're screaming back and forth at each other, and they've never paused once to be like, oh, something could be going on with this person. It's just more so like, you're attacking me, I hate you. Go over there and I'll be over here.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I hate that whole dynamic of like, oh, if they wanted to, they would. And I just be like, as someone who I try to work on it even more, but I suck at like staying up on text messages. I'm trying to get an assistant to help me with emails. And it's not because I don't care about it. It's because like I forget, or I responded in my mind, or, it's a time where we're not doing screen time. So like if my kids, they get 30 minutes of screen time. So like if they're not allowed to be on their screen, it's hard for me to be on mine, like, cause that's incredibly hypocritical, right? Like people will see those messages and I'm like, the only thing that's going to change that mindset is like having more narratives like this, but also people getting better at communicating their needs and getting used to being to the point of like, you have to teach people how to treat you. Right. Like if I always thought that like my communication style was, the person should just know without me communicating that to them, nothing would ever work. Right. Like I think there's this whole mindset that if they wanted to, they would. But it could be that this person is also struggling. And those are the kind of messages that I hate seeing on social media, because it's like to a certain extent, but it's also like, have you expressed your needs and desires? Have you actually stated that? And then they said no. Or did you just assume that they thought the same way as you, or they they did dishes on the same day, or for them plates went on the top rack and bowls went on the bottom rack. So them not doing that is just them having, being mad at you. Like, I think those are the kind of messages that I can't stand seeing, because I'm like, well, that's not true, because there are many times where I forget to respond to people, and it's not because I dislike them. It's just because like, girl, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Come back and be like, even if it's an angry message, like, you got one more time to not reply to me. But that still gives me a nudge, like it reminds me that like, hey, when you don't reply to me, it hurts my feelings. Okay, so now I got to start setting, I don't know, timers, or, telling them to call me because it's easy, but I think there's all these mindsets of, oh, if they wanted to, they would. Would they?
Yeah, I hate that message. I've seen it online especially within the dating, sphere, where it's like, oh, if they wanted to, they would. And there's all this bad advice going around, and it is going so viral, and we're all impressionable. Somebody's taking this advice as their gospel, and they're like, okay, well, because they didn't do X, Y, and Z, that person hates me or this person's a narcissist. It's not all like, that's why we're needed within this space, because some of the information that goes around, I look at it and it's not meant to be comedic, but
I laugh at them too though. Like you in good company, because I literally be like, what?
We're not on the same page. There's so many issues that can go away if we just get on the same page, business wise, relationship wise. But when we're not on the same page, then we feel like we tend to go at each other. But we have to get on the same page. A lot of times we're in the same book, maybe on the same chapter, but somebody's ahead of the other person. But until we get on the same page, you're gonna be firing shots back at each other, and we just have to pause and learn to understand that people are coming from the things that we think about or we know. The average person, I don't think it ever goes through their head.
Yeah.
Because they're living life on autopilot, just paying bills, living life, raising kids, taking care of aging parents. So you're not really thinking about these things.
Yeah, and
on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I think it's even harder when they have to go to 50 different platforms to get like an answer to one thing. That's why I really like when I went following like, you know, licensed mental health professionals like you and looking at stuff, because when they specialize in something or they talk about it, they'll share resources, but it's that much easier because I can share a video about like 5 ways to help with depression. Those 5 ways came from years of working with patients and also from this article and that article and that article. But you don't need to read all of that. You can if you want to click the resource, or you can just look at these tips. Like I think it's also, you know, the reason why social media can be incredibly helpful when it does what it should is one, it connects people, you know, it connects people, you know, who have access to stuff that you may have never met, but also like it takes out the guesswork for some time, but it's also dangerous because like it's taking out the guesswork. And it's just like, no, you should have challenged some of these videos. You should have challenged. Like, you shouldn't have taken that at face value. Like that was, like in the first place.
I think educating people on how to consume this information is important because I can miss. I'm sure that there's videos where I've missed. So I'm not perfect. Just that my information is probably more accurate than the majority of people. But I can miss. Not everything is going to be exactly the way that it should be. But this is still somebody who has gone to school for this amount of time. That's why I like the way you do your videos. I'm Dr. Martin, boom, boom, because people sometimes need an introduction to know, okay, well, whatever this woman's going to tell me, at least I know I can take it to be the truth, even if I don't like it, because she's qualified. And we have to go through all these hoops, and there's the algorithm is just a whole different conversation. You have to figure out how to hack. That's why I spend my time on, like, the majority of the day trying to figure out how to hack. Facebook is different from Instagram. Got it. Okay, it's the same company, Meta, but this one's different from there. YouTube is different from here. Got it. People want to hear about this, and then the way that they deliver the content is so specific to each platform. So we're playing this game, but what makes me feel better is that I'm here in LA. The industry, they don't have any idea what people want to see because they're so behind. So not only are we ahead of our peers in the mental health space, we're ahead of how people consume information. So all of the painstaking work of figuring out this doesn't work here, that doesn't work here, it's all going to make sense in the end because once you reach your people, they'll do the work for you.
Yeah.
All we have to do is just get to the people. They'll spread the word. They'll bring things in. They'll bring in opportunities. But it's just staying focused on trying to reach the people who a lot of times it's just like the things that we're afraid to say out loud. I put it on paper and then you put it in a skit. And that's how you connect with people. Now they trust you. Now, of course, you're Dr. Martin, but then it's like, oh, wow, like I feel like I know this person, which is really hard to get in the clinic sometimes because it's like, oh, I'm helping you, but I can't really tell you like what I'm up to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I definitely think the reason, I think you're right, because I think it sounds insane, but I think the reason why I get more trust in the community is because when people say ridiculous stuff, I'm like, all right, no, you done lost your mind, okay? Like I genuinely think it's because like I consistently state what what I do. You know, me being a psychologist is what I do. It's not who I am. And as someone who has a psychologist, is also working through mental, like knows all of these realms, I can wholeheartedly tell you that it's not always going to be helpful for your well-being to rise above if someone's talking to you like they have no sense. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not. I think I was like, some of my videos will do well, but the ones where I'm just like, I respond to a comment and I'm like, you done lost your darn mind, and I'm gonna help you find it in 90 seconds or less. You know, just to be like, well, You ain't gotta curse everybody out to curse them out. You could just be like, let me tell you something
Right.
about yourself, because you got the right one today. You can't talk to people
Right.
like that. That is inappropriate.
As boundaries. As boundaries.
Like,
Boundaries. That something we all struggle with. So sometimes we need to hear things in a certain way. That's how I learned. Like coming up playing football, like it was hard for me to read between the lines.
Yeah.
But when you say it the way you say it is direct, it's harsh. But once you put your feelings to the side, you're like, oh wow, that is true. I can't let them come and keep doing this over and over to me and not stand for myself. Because then I can't stand for myself in any area of my life because I can't say no to my mom or whatever the case may be. I like how you come in your direct.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times people, when they think of mental health, I think they think it means like, okay, so you're always putting someone before you. People can talk to you any old kind of way. That the only way to have appropriate mental health is like put things before you and selflessness and stuff like that. And you can't ever acknowledge that something is rude. And I'm just like, no, nobody, me being direct with you and saying that this was inappropriate, that's mental health, because you're not going to be coming into a space making me or my community feel uncomfortable. And additionally, who told you? Like, so since I've been recently stating like that whole like, don't advocate for yourself. That is like really, they got the best PR. Like those habitual line steppers, they got the best PR, because you really got people out here thinking that advocating for yourself makes you a monster. They got the best marketing team. Oh, well, this is how to be good you have good mental health. And I'm like, man, if I had your marketing, I would be at 3 million followers already, because you really got people thinking that that's the only way to be a good person. Well, you have to be quiet about, you can't say these things. And I'm just like, who told you that? Who told you that like advocating for yourself it makes you a bad person? Was it your parent? Let's talk about it on the clock though. Because this is because it's like, what?
It's ridiculous. And the more I think about it, it's funny because these are generations of people who've been conditioned to think this way. So it's going to take a while to break it. So that community, they'll have the best PR over it. They'll have a big stronghold on people, because when people hear that, like, okay, I should be docile. I should be sweet. I should be. But then that passive nature of how you are is making you lose professionally, interpersonally. You're going to lose in so many areas when sometimes it's not good to be humble.
Yeah.
These are things that we're told as kids. Like when you lower yourself, guess what? You put yourself low enough for them to come and step on you. And you'll see that in contract negotiations and brand deals. There's so many things that I've started saying no to this year, because I'm like, you wouldn't pay a white gay doctor in Hollywood this. And I have to say that because there's a certain demographic of people who get certain things, and no disrespect to any community, I want to learn about every community and advocate for all. But then when you look at yourself in relation to who's out there, that, okay, if I looked a certain way, if I had blonde hair and blue eyes, and the first 3.5 seconds of the video will get so much more attention. So we know all these things. So we have to advocate for ourselves, and when our community sees us do that, we're teaching them how they should go about life, because the disrespect won't stop until you can speak up for yourself. And if you have good intentions and you care for everybody and you want everybody to win, then you can absolve yourself of that guilt of feeling like, oh, I'm bad because I spoke up for myself, or I shouldn't have said that was too harsh. Well, if you didn't say that, you'll keep getting punched in the mouth, and your community's watching you. And then how can they stand up to their parents, or how can they get the accommodation that they need for themselves in school if you can't do it? Because they're drawing from your energy. So it kind of challenges me to have to stand up for myself in all these different spaces, because I'm requiring people to do that. So I have to be. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I know that we all are, but I want to make sure I follow through with my word, and I'm standing up for myself in everything that I do. I'm making decisions that show that I respect myself, which is really hard. Really hard.
But you make a very good point. It shows that you respect yourself, right? Like people will make it seem like, it's even like the whole being humble. Since when has it been wrong to be confident about the skills that took you time to build, right? Like people would rather be like some people in shock and upset someone who knows more than you than to be excited about the whole aspect of like learning. Like when I kid you not, every time somebody knows more than me about something and I can tell, I ask. Like I have asked you questions. Like I always reach out, and it's just like, well, they know more than me. You expect me to? Why would I? Why this person knows more than me? I'm gonna ask the person who knows more than me and is doing better. Like that is invigorating for me. Other people would be like, they think they know so much. They do. They do know more than me. What? Come on, like what's the issue? Like I'm always just amazed. You can tell a lot about people with how they respond to individuals who know more than them. Because with me, I'm like, connection made. Let me tell you something. Guess who know more about this than me? This person. And if they got a course, I'm there. You know, like, what's the issue? What? It doesn't mean anything about you. It's just like, well, if you have a question, you ask. If you want to know more, you learn. We're all learning. Like, why would I take offense to knowing less than you? How is that offensive to me?
Yeah, because you've done the work on yourself, but most people haven't done that work on themselves, and they don't realize that they're projecting. They're projecting whatever they're feeling, and it's coming out in their response. Like I can hear it. So a lot of times, based off the energy I get from somebody in a certain space, I'm like, oh wow, I know where they are because I used to be there. So you give them grace, but sometimes you gotta give them space too, because that energy is infectious because they have to work on themselves. So I think we just hold the mirror up to ourselves much more because of what we do.
We have to.
So we're able to really, you see how ugly you are, how beautiful you are, how ugly you can be, how beautiful you can be. And once you know yourself on that level, it's easier to give other people grace, but then we can say what we say with more confidence. Whereas people are sometimes, like you can just tell when somebody is projecting on you, and all you can do is just pray for them and give them space. But because I've had to deal with that constantly, and now I've let go of my need for understanding. So we just kind of give people grace, and they're coming from wherever they're coming from. But we know that in order for us to really be helpers, we have to look at ourselves first. That's very difficult to have to stare at yourself every day.
It is. I always be like, I think about, I think about thinking. And I'd be like, man, it's exhausting. Like people like, I'm like, listen, I wish, I just want to make sure my threshold is high. So if I offended you, if there's an issue, I need you to tell me, because when I eventually find out, not only am I going to be mad at myself for like doing that, I'm going to be mad at you for not telling me. So I was like, we're both in trouble, because why the heck didn't you tell me? I was, like, I'm trying to fix this now. So I'm just like, all right, now, if you don't tell me something is off, we both gonna be in trouble, because I need to know. One, I need to fix it. But two, why the heck didn't you tell me that was something that was making you upset? And then I got to be like, probably because I was gonna come at you this way, huh? Like probably because this is a very confrontational style to ask you to kind of deal with it in the first place. And it's just like,
this is very advanced.
It's very advanced to just be like,
very advanced. I mean, I think on the same exact level, but then I have to like give myself grace, because when I'm on that level and other people aren't, then I'm like harder on myself, and people are like, oh, whatever. I'm like, but I'm doing all this mental work, and they're like,
it's no big deal. Oh, it's fine. And I'm like, well, no, it's not fine. And I mean, like, that's what most of the people around me, I'm always just like, listen, I'm not about to dig for your feelings. So if you don't bring it to my attention, I'm going to assume it's not an issue. However, please realize that anything you do bring to my attention will get addressed. So I want you to take solace in that. It's not going to get ignored, but I'm not about to go digging for, I'm not about to pull your emotions out of you. You are not my patient, honey. Like we are friends. And also, like, I'm not doing
You have to use that phrase.
Bring it to me or not. Because that's, I think a lot of people will be like, well, I wonder if they're upset. Did they tell you they're upset? No. Well, I guess that's not on you. No.
Healthy communication is so underrated, and it's difficult.
Yeah, because
I'll start using that. I like that.
Yeah, let them know, like, listen, now you seem like you're upset, but you didn't tell me you're upset. So did you want to get some food, or what are we doing? Like, I'm not going to pull it out of you. Like, just because I'm a psychologist, you're not my patient. Did you get an invoice after this conversation? No. Then you're not my patient. Yeah. Why?
And you shouldn't have to carry all that emotional labor on your back. And that's how you get to have those conversations where you talk to somebody and then you walk away feeling so heavy. Yeah. You shouldn't have to carry all that. Like, you have to pull your own weight too.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let y'all know, I'm not carrying it. Okay,
Right.
It's just be, oh, did you want to have a nope? I got childcare pickup. I got to cook dinner. My dishwasher is still broken. Like,
Yeah.
no. Like if you bring it to me, we'll talk about it. But other than that, I'm gonna assume you are having a cheery day, honey. I'm just gonna assume that.
I
Like,
like that. Yeah.
but yeah. Well, Dr.
Yeah.
Kojo, thank you so much for coming on this show. I very much appreciate it. I wanted to definitely talk about ADHD, and I love the fact that your platform provides an opportunity from multiple experiences. Like I like that you show so many different aspects of yourself. You show it from experiencing it. You're providing skits, from practice, from comedy too. So tell everybody where they can see you, because you're also on some stages as well.
Yes, ma'am. I have a show May 24th at a winery in Temecula. That's out here in wine country in California. It's about 2 hours south of LA, somewhere around there. So that's May 24th on a Friday. I have a show June 1st. That's a Saturday night at the Fourth Wall Cafe, which is my favorite spot to perform at in Hollywood. And then I have one confirmed show for July 11th at the Uptown Comedy Theater in Atlanta. So that's my first comedy show in the South.
Oh, that's what's up.
It's gonna be a really good one.
What kind of
July 11th?
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
July 11th in Atlanta. I was gonna ask what kind of comedy, like what can they expect to see? Because you show clips on your social media too.
Right. They can expect to see the content that I talk about online, but through my experiences. So, come and see me poke fun at myself and all the silly things that we do that we don't want to talk about, but it's more liberating when you talk about it, because you realize you're not the only person who is self-sabotaging in these different ways. And it draws you to, other people on a deeper level, because I don't like small talk. Like I want to meet somebody and like tell me the good stuff. Like I like to connect like that with people. So I like to do that with the audience and strangers. It's sometimes easier to talk to strangers than it is to your family. So that's kind of a snippet of what I'll talk about.
I love that. Somebody did this post about like, describe what you do in the worst possible way. And I said, oh, I talk shit. And was like, what?
I like that.
Like, yeah. And then I teach other people how to also like talk their own shit. like, and then not let people talk shit against them. It's just like, or gossip. Gossip. That's what we do, right? Like, what did they say to you?
It's the truth. It's the truth. And it keeps it fun for you, because that's the absolute truth. We're getting the juicy details that nobody else gets, but we're managing it in a therapeutic way. And then you take it and you throw it back to them, and now they can set boundaries for themselves, aka talk shit, or prevent that people do that. Prevent that it's done to them. Because it's very empowering to just tell somebody, hey, you're not going to talk like this to me. And then to do that to people and say, hey, I need to stand for myself in this level, that level, this way, that way. That's one of the most empowering things that you can get. And it's not taught in the formative years. It's not taught in middle school, elementary school, preschool, high school, college. You're expected to go through life and just learn it after trauma. That's pretty much
Which is crazy, because I could tell you that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I couldn't tell you what to do when I was so stressed out that I couldn't complete my homework. Like, those are the skills we should have got. Like, oh, yes, hypotenuse. That's great. What do I do when I'm too anxious to even go to an event? Can you tell me that? I'm over here learning how to make a quiche, and I don't know how to do grounding exercises. This makes no sense.
Right. Learn how to write in cursive. All these different things.
Ridiculous. Well, thank you so much. Oh, also, what are your social media handles, and what social media platforms can we find you on?
So I think Instagram, I guess, is like the home that people first promote. So my Instagram page is at DrKojoSarfo, Dr. Kojo Sarfo. On TikTok is the same thing, but there's a dot between the doctor and the Kojo Sarfo. And our Facebook community is also growing as well. So that's facebook.com/Kojo Sarfo. And also on YouTube Shorts. We're on YouTube, YouTube, but YouTube Shorts is where we get the most engagement. So youtube.com/Kojo Sarfo is another place that you can find me at. And my website, kojosarfo.com as well. But Instagram is probably a better place to see the most current stuff that I'm working on.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't find them on Instagram, you can find them everywhere. You just named every platform that they're in.
Right. I just wanted to be sure.
Good.
Only Facebookers are like only TikTokers. So like wherever your platform is, I want to come and communicate to you in the ways that our content is best delivered on that platform. I'm trying my best to be organized.
That's very good.
We're really
Because you have a different population on
It's
every
hard.
single one. Because
Right.
it's good because you helping
They're different
everybody. It's
people.
different people because my Facebook people are very different than my Instagram, which is very different than my TikTok. My TikTok at this point is just all of my
Right.
students and their friends.